Hello. I guess I slept with this thing on. Today's the day that we are going to be taking a look at the Giant XTC SLR 29er in a medium in the black colorway. But I'm going to get to ride it. I know I don't get to ride every single bike that we bring in, but this one's different. I know the guy that's buying this bike, so we're going to take it for a test ride, see how this puppy actually does. But first, let's eat some breakfast. All right, so I do need to be upfront and honest about something. I did actually change a couple things on this bike before I took it out to ride. This is not my bicycle. I wanted it to be very, very clean when I took it back, and everybody knows once you get the rubber dirty, it's no bueno. You can't get it spotless again. So I did take my personal wheels off of my Orbea Oys and put them on this bike. Now they're the 1900Xs from DT Swiss. That actually brought this sucker down to like 25.5 pounds when I rode it, which is phenomenal for this bike. And the DT Swiss 1900Xs aren't that expensive. I need to step back a minute. My wheel set had an SLX cassette on it. The stock ones had an SX. SX cassettes are heavy as crap. I don't know what the weight of the SLX is, but that could play a factor into why it took almost a little over a pound off the bike. Let's get breakfast going. Let's cook up my beloved oatmeal and get on the road. Let's do this. And that, my friends, is how you make a nice, delicious bowl of boiling water, because I already ate before I filmed this and I didn't think that through. I guess let's just go through some pros and cons while we take a little ride. And yes, I'm still trying to figure out how to get better audio. Any tips is always welcome, but I'm trying some different things out, so let me know. So the number one thing I can say about this bike is the frame. The frame is awesome. I think that this is an extremely good platform to build upon. As one of the people down below stated at one point, this is a great frame to replace as you break. Meaning, when you break that SX rear derailleur, replace it with something better, but the platform itself is rock solid. So I didn't state this in the previous video, but this frame actually weighs like 1,427 grams. That's what I read on the interwebs. I didn't actually tear this bike down and weigh it myself, but that's phenomenal, especially for an aluminum bike, and at this price point, that is very good. The first thing that I really can say about this bike is how well it handles and how it literally, I don't know how else to describe it, but I'm coming from an Orbea Oys. That is a race full suspension mountain bike. It is my favorite mountain bike that I've really ever raced. This bike felt very similar, and this is a $1,300 bike. My bike retailed, the one that I'm racing retailed at $4 grand. So, handling wise, going through corners, this bike was very predictable. It felt very light on its feet, so it felt like a race bike. And for me, back in the day, you could only get a bike that felt and operated like this if you were at least minimum spending over $2 grand on a bike. So for $1,300, I think this is a smoking deal. So the through axle does stiffen the frame up. The rear end is also an asymmetrical rear end. Now this is very important because this is a cross-country race bike. So what does asymmetrical rear end means? Basically, the quick and easy answer is they make the rear end kind of offset because one side is obviously going to weigh a little more than the other side because one side has all the gears, the derailleurs, crank, all that jazz. So they kind of make the rear end to where the weight's going to be more center, that basically means that this bike is gonna track better. And other than this bike being a hardtail, it tracked phenomenally. Like going up climbs, I did not notice that it was a hardtail. Like it felt like my Oi's going up a climb. Other than it weighs a couple pounds heavier, but when I was doing an hour and a half test ride session, you really don't notice 2 pounds all that much. The only time I can notice that kind of weight is if it's like a 6-hour ride and by the end of it, you're just like every little ounce you think you could tell a difference with. So like I said, the bike also climbs phenomenally, especially for I keep saying this over and over, and I think this is a testament to how much this bike surprised me. I knew it was supposed to be a $1,300 race bike. Again, I did switch the wheels out, but this bike feels like a race bike for that price point. Climbing, it climbed great. I had no trouble. This little kicker of a climb, it is steep. Video never does it justice, but it's steep. It's very difficult to get up if you're, well, I say it's difficult to get up it, but people do it all the time on like gravel bikes. I was at least thinking first ride out, I figured I'd hit a couple of these big roots, maybe get some slippage going. Nothing like that happened, nothing. It climbed like a mountain goat. I was pleasantly surprised. I was excited to test ride this fork. I guess the best thing I can liken the Giant Crest 3400 mil travel fork to. I had an XTC probably 3 years ago or so, hardtail carbon bike, and it had a Recon on it. This feels very, very similar to that Recon. So it really surprised me in the slow stuff. It works great. Climbing the fork worked very well. Descending, it works pretty good. I say pretty good because there's a few times when I would let the brakes fly and I would just go pretty hard down some of these descents just to see how quickly this fork would spring back into action, how well it took up that fast, chunky stuff. And there was a few times I think I overworked it because it just wasn't springing back like I would like it to. But it's on a $1,300, but it was on a $1,300 bike. So with that being said, the fork operated phenomenally for the price point that it's coming on. I did mess with the rebound because I wanted to make sure it was kind of dialed in for me as best I could. Usually for me, like I am okay at setting up suspension. I'm not some world-renowned suspension expert. So it takes me probably a week to 2 weeks of riding a bike to really dial it in for me to where I'm like, all right, this feels awesome. With that being said, I did mess around with it. I couldn't really get the rebound to feel, I guess, up to my standards. I guess that's a good way of putting it. It just didn't feel right on the really fast stuff. Other than that, the fork performed flawlessly and I was super surprised. I mean, it feels like a Recon. That is the best association or comparison I can give you. So all of these cons that I can say with this bike can be wiped away if you just label it and chalk it up to price point. This bike's $1,300 and all the cons that I had are reflective of that price point. There again, price point related. I do not care for like the double digit brake levers. They're too long. I brake with my my middle fingers, and you know, with those style of brake levers, even if I ran them out a little bit, I could still, it just felt weird. I did not like them. The lockout lever worked pretty good, but it's plastic. The whole thing's plastic. The lockout lever felt cheap, which I guess it is cheap. And a couple times it got hung up. I do need to look into this. When I got back to the shop, I played around with the lockout lever until it didn't hang up anymore. And I'm not 100% what the hang up was, but I would lock it out, and then whenever I would go to unlock it and it would spring back, it would be unlocked, but it would felt like there's a ton of cable tension or a ton of cable slack in the line. I'd jiggle the handle a little bit and it'd pop back into place. So I took the cable out, routed it again, made sure it wasn't a cable issue. Everything worked great, and then once I kind of took it apart and put it back together, rode around the parking lot, it worked great, worked fine. So I don't know if that was just a hang up, but either way, that lockout lever just feels super cheap, and I wouldn't be surprised if the first crash you had it snaps right off. But that is very cheaply and easily remedied. You can just get a different lever. So all in all, that is my first ride and first impressions of this bike. With that being said, my first impression of this thing is, for the money, it's an awesome bike. Especially if you were buying it with the intention of cross-country riding, improving your times if that's what you're into, or racing. Like, this bike is designed to go fast through the woods on cross-country trails. I would not recommend taking it to like, Beach Mountain and trying a downhill run. It's not that. If you want a hardtail to do that on, I still think you probably need something bigger, but they have the Fathom. The Fathom's more of a trail bike. This is made to be an entry to the race market, if you kind of get what I'm saying there. And this bike feels like it. It's $1,300. I keep saying that and I can't help it because I'm still blown away that this bike handles as well as it does at that price point. I know I'm bragging on this bike quite a bit. I don't get any kickbacks from Giant. I actually had a guy say that I probably do get kickbacks from Giant, and that's why I'm talking so much about their bicycles. I wish, Giant, if you would love to give me a kickback, if a company that size watches my videos and wants to pay me for it, I am a-okay with that. But I get $0 from any of, well, actually, YouTube gives me some money now, which is pretty freaking cool, all thanks to you guys. So thank you for that. But no, the reason I'm going over these Giant bikes so much is because in the current mask on COVID situation that we have, they're the only real bicycles we're able to get in a timely manner. And even then, they bought this bicycle like 2 months ago and it's just now coming in. So that's why I'm going over a lot of Giants. But that's neither here nor there. That will be another video. I've got the finale coming up of the Cane Creek Cup. Stick around. I'll see you guys in the next one. Later.